I know I have a couple of relatives. I actually have a son, an older son, and I'll be very transparent, that did jail time, and it was unfair to him.
Mm.
It was unfair, and we're still having issues because of the trauma that he shouldn't have been in. The judge got personal, because that's the other part about the justice system. You do have some judges that are very corrupt,
Yeah.
and they don't really focus on rehabilitation. The prison system itself needs to be fully revamped. It needs to be focused more on rehabilitation. And people that are very violent, not throw a violent felony on a person just to punish them, because there's an abuse of over prosecuting people, putting labels on them, that when they come out, you're actually creating a disabled class.
Mm.
It's almost like people that went to Vietnam, when they come out with a PTSD, you're creating
Mm.
a disabled class of people. And so I've seen that firsthand with people that I've known, when it hits home, and when you really dedicate time to work with people, you be like, man, this jail thing, not to say some people didn't learn,
Yeah.
but the trauma that goes along with it, especially when the crime was not that serious. The judge actually that sent my son in, it was supposed to be 3 months, youthful offender. He ended up being afraid, ran. She punished him with 5 years. He was one of the
Ooh.
youngest kids
Wow.
in an upstate prison. He had to run for his life one day, that they were trying to set him up to kill him, to do something to him, right? Because they try
Yeah.
to rape men in prison and stuff like. He was too young. He was too young. When I was in the court, I saw how the judge was purposely shutting down the attorney. And
Mm.
one of the most important people in a courtroom is the stenographer. But the judge was purposely striking, said, "Don't put that on the record." And there was an appeal, there was no evidence of anything. I was shocked when my oldest son told me, Dad, he was very bitter. And then he said, I heard that she made the news. And I did my research. Lo and behold, she got brought up for corruption. Then
Wow.
many judges. There was a judge in Pennsylvania sending many young men to prison, getting paid under the table, made millions of dollars getting paid. You know, this happens. Unfortunately, that's over sending people for long prison sentences for crimes that really don't deserve that much. And if they had to go in, I'm 100% for sending somebody in that's not safe in their community,
Yeah.
you know. But many of these young men and young women, what they need is something more rehabilitative, and really go after the gang element. You have to go after the gang element, like they're doing in El Salvador. Um, that's very rare, but it's being done now, and it's been done in a couple of other nations even before El Salvador and a couple of other, and it's worked. But it's not popular. The problem is that it's not popular to be tough on violent gangs. You know, you see how a person like Trump would say it, and the media twists everything around in a way to say, "Oh, he's discriminating." Like, no, just hear it out. Here, it's this type people that are murdering people. That's
Yeah.
different than no one wants to live in that environment. I love to work to get people so they do not do prison time. But if somebody does commit a murder or heinous act, so the system is there for a reason, to make things safe for us.
Mm.
I'm not against that at all. I've worked with advocates that they are like, everybody's not fully rehabilitated. No, they're not. I've worked with people that have killed many people. I worked with a guy that killed like over 30 people. That's a different ball game. You know,
Serial killer, right?
when you work
Wait, wait, wait. You're saying you worked with a gentleman who killed 30
over
individuals.
30 people, this guy's a
Okay.
serial killer. That's different. You can't play around with that. And you have a lot of things that are really reshaping our youth. You have the music, even the drill music, drill rap. It's some
Mm-hmm.
music, and they have different versions of it. You know, in other countries, they have music that's different. That's meant to get people violent, and
Yeah.
even that, if you say that, people say, "Wow, you're attacking my culture." It's like let's just stop playing. You know, let's just look at it. These things make a difference. They really, really do. You know, schooling, the way schooling is, if a kid is not doing well academically, instead of pushing high AP class standard, if you have a kid that has a learning disability, what are we going to do? Let's get some skills in this kid's hand. Maybe that kid is good. Maybe that kid is a good auto mechanic. They've taken a lot of trades out of schools. See,
Yep.
they've taken all these systems that worked and they've destroyed systems that have worked. And then somebody comes up with a concept of a charter school, they're in the, oh wow, look at the idea of this person. There's nothing new under the sun. People have done these things before. It's just
Mm-hmm.
they've been destroyed, but we know that they work. You know, teaching kids about entrepreneurial work,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like whatever happened to that. Everybody's not going to get a master's degree, right? The average doctor cannot change the oil for their car,
Yeah.
right? They can't do that. And so, you know, it's all these things. So, yeah,
Yeah, no, I think unfortunately you have a lot of these institutions. They've set up these kids for failure, and I recall back when I was in the CUNY system. I remember going to school, going to college, and seeing nothing but these credit card companies on the sidewalks trying to get you to sign up for a credit card,
they,
trying to
they
get
got
you in debt.
they got me when they got a lot of us, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny because you going back to something that you said, you spoke about, the need for incarceration if someone is not if someone is a danger to society, right? And clearly there are individuals who, can't be around the general public for various reasons because they're dangerous, right? So, I think about the job of government is to really restrain
Yeah.
evil and protect its citizens, but we see a lot of the opposite happening now in our society with sort of allowing evil to run rampant,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's like, you know, you got, for instance, like you mentioned Giuliani, and in the 80s, it was the whole Reagan era too, the whole war on drugs. But you look at, not only there were hard drugs then, you have different types of drugs now. One of the biggest issues is synthetic drugs now that are really, which were caught on. A lot of these synthetic drugs have caught on in the prison system. So people
Mm,
come out of the prison system as addicts because of the stress of jail, prison. You know, I've seen videos even on YouTube of people that were getting high in jail, you know, because they give inmates tablets, you know, and some people sneak in phones. And I was
yeah.
like, oh my God, that's how. And I've heard it from people too that have been incarcerated, all the access and how they come out. They've come out addicted to drugs. So you see, we're creating not only a class that in there have they become addicts, They are, when they're coming out, they're disabled
Mm,
as well.
mhm,
They don't have the resources. The housing is not solved. You know, there was a guy in California that came up with these shelters outside instead of people living on the sidewalk with the shopping carts. The guy came up with these little tiny houses on wheels. And in California, the government went after him and they took all the houses that he made, confiscated, destroyed them. Of course, it's free. It was, you know, put on the sidewalk, but it was cleaner than people, and people had a place to sleep rather than. And you see, these solutions that are government sometimes perpetuates it,
yeah.
makes it worse. Shelters, you know how many people that have been incarcerated, men in particular, would rather sleep in the street because the shelters are so dangerous for men.
Yeah.
Dangerous. You know, so many problems that have been created by government common sense issues, and no one, and you have all these educated politicians with all these degrees, and they can sit down and say, this is a problem, how are we going to solve it, you know, which I have a theory about that. I think one of the issues with solving issues in is because there are too many attorneys
Okay. So
in government.
okay. So
So
so you blame the lawyers.
you know why? Let me say this. Lawyers are good at reading laws, but lawyers are trained to win. So if you have the two sides, the Democrat versus the Republicans, they're not trained to collaborate very often.
Mm,
See, social workers are trained to collaborate. Teachers are trained to collaborate. So there has to be something in the training of attorneys and lawyers to say, look, we need, not to say that there's not some, but there has to be a better training. If you're going to have a lot of lawyers in politics, that there is a different way of working in politics. It's not about going against the other party. There's a lot of time that is wasted about which party's in control, you know, and I think that's almost innate in the profession.
mm,
You understand what I mean? Is make a new law instead of looking at, does this law make sense? It's not about just making something that looks good on paper, it's tight on paper. How does this make sense to be rolled out in the
mm,
community? That way, how is it really going to solve a social issue and not create an unintended consequence? Because very often a lot of these things are creating unintended consequences.